This is going to take me ages. Okay, before we begin, I do want to say that I'm not stupid, and I do know that it's not 2023 anymore. I'm fully aware that we are 2 months into 2024. However, I have read over 60 books last year and I really wanted to talk about them, and I did not have a YouTube channel in 2023, so I'm talking about them now. My channel, my rules. I know this is 2 months late. Please enjoy the video anyway. This is going to take me such a long time, but I am in my oversized t-shirt and I'm ready for this. I have stacks and stacks of books on my bed and we are going to get right into them. I'm going to start with January and end with December, and I'm going to try to pile through them because, like I said, it's over 60 books. So the first one is called Addicted After All by Krista Beccarici. This is the 5th book in Lillian Lowe's point of view, which is the 7th book, I think, in the Addicted/Calloway Sister series. I gave this book 4.8 stars. I really enjoyed it. It was also in my favorites video. It wasn't a 5-star, but I did really love this. I think this was one of my favorite books from Lillian Lowe's story. I really, really enjoyed this one. The next one is called Before We Were Strangers by Renee Carlino, I think was her name. I gave this 3.8 stars. I really enjoyed it. It was not a favourite of mine. The writing style kind of reminded me of Colleen Hoover. I don't have the physical copy at the moment because it's at a friend's house, but I did really enjoy that one, and I love the cover as well. Then I read the first 2 books in the Boys of Torment series. I loved both of them. I gave the first one, Binding 13, 4.5 stars, and then the second one, Keeping 13, I gave 5 stars. I bawled my eyes out with this one. I was crying. I was traveling through South Africa with a friend and I was reading and he was reading, and I suddenly just started crying and crying and crying, and I was so sad, and he looked at me and he was like, "Are you alright? Do you need a hug?" And I was like, "Yes, I do." The ending of this one was just really, really sad, and I highly recommend both of these. I also talked about these in my favourites video, one of my favourite series on the planet. Then I read the Mindfuck series by S.T. Abbey. I really enjoyed this one as well. Really fast-paced, really entertaining. It was a really immersive storyline, and I was on the edge of my seat because it's 5 books compiled into one, I believe. So it's a really thick book, or 5 really small books, and every single one ended on a cliffhanger and you just had to keep reading. I read this on my Kindle, so I don't have the physical copy. Really, really loved it though. It was also in my favourites video. Next I read Saving Six, which is the 3rd book in the Boys of Torment series by Chloe Walsh. I like this couple even better than the first one because I am ridiculously in love with the boy in this book. Love the entire series. This series overall is a 5 million stars for me. I think I gave this one 4.8 stars. The next book I read was Pretty Reckless by L.J. Shen. I can't remember a thing. This is the first book in the All Saints High series, which is a spin-off of the Sinners of Saints series. I think that's it. Don't quote me on that. This book was fine at the time. I can't remember a single thing, so it did not stick with me. I think I only remember the name of the girl, which was Daria, and that's it. So I think it was a 3-star at the time. But again, I cannot remember a single thing. Then the next book is called Broken Night, also by L.J. Shen. This is the next book in that series. This one was Childhood Best Friends to Lovers, which is my favourite trope of all time, so I did really enjoy this one. I think I gave it 4.5 stars, or 4.2 or something, because there was one thing towards the ending that I did not love and that really knocked it down. I think 0.5 star or something, but I did really enjoy that book, and I do think about this one because I loved the characters. So that's that one. Like I said, I was traveling at this time, so I read everything on my Kindle, so I don't have the physical copy of the next 2 books as well, but then afterwards we start getting into physical books again. The next one's called Famous Last Words by C.W. Farnsworth, I think her name was. I gave this one 3.5 stars at the time, but I think it should be a bit lower because I did enjoy it. However, the only thing I can remember is that it was a hooky romance and dislike to lovers, and that's all. I don't remember anything regarding the characters, absolutely nothing. So I think it should be a 3 stars. I gave it 3.5 at the time though. The next one's called Blindside by Candy Steiner. I remember liking the first 60% of this book, and then afterwards it started going downhill very, very fast. It was fake dating, and I think he was teaching her to date. I think that's it. Also a college sports romance. I don't remember much. Wasn't really memorable to me. I remember thinking that the first like 60% was 4 stars, and then the last 40% was like 2 stars, so overall 3 stars. However, I didn't love it, and I also didn't continue the series, so I'm not too interested. Didn't really stick with me. The next one, however, did really stick with me because it's One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I absolutely adore this book. I reread this book 4 times, bawled my eyes out every single time, and I remember just hyperventilating, tears streaming down my face. So 5 stars, 10s all across the board. I would highly recommend this one. Next book is Fuel the Fire. It was Rose and Connor's second book. I remember giving the first one, Kiss This Guy, 5 stars. I adored that book. I really love Connor and Rose together. However, this book was not my absolute favourite. I think I gave this one 3.8 stars because it didn't make me feel what the first one made me feel. However, I'd still really enjoy this series and I love this couple, so still read it. Next was Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren. I really enjoyed this book. I think I gave it 5 stars at the time. However, I don't think about it that often, so I think it's supposed to be like 4 stars, 4.5, but it was childhood friends to lovers, which gets me every single time, and I really, really enjoyed it. Then I read one of my absolute favourite books on the planet, which is Redeeming Six, again by Chloe Walsh, the 4th book in the Boys of Torment series. I loved this book the most. Like I said, loved the boy in this book. I loved his character development and all of his trauma that he worked through, and my copy of this book is so incredibly annotated and underlined. This has a special place in my heart. This is like a trillion, gazillion, billion stars. I loved this so much, and again I bawled my eyes out. Then I read Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating, 3 stars. I remember it being friends to lovers, and it was really, really rom-com-y. I did not like it as much as Love and Other Words. Again, not really memorable. Next is Beautiful Disaster by Jamie Maguire. I enjoyed this for what it was. I was in the mood for a good girl, bad boy college romance, which is exactly what this was. So it did deliver in that department. It wasn't my favourite, again, 3.7 stars. I did enjoy it. Afterwards, I decided to watch the movie, which was the biggest mistake I have ever made because that was absolutely horrible, but this was enjoyable. Then because the last 2 books were not my absolute favourites, I felt myself getting into a bit of a slump. So I thought, let's pick up a fast-paced, short book. So then I picked up Bully by Penelope Douglas, and this put me in the reading slump I was trying to avoid because I hated this book with everything inside of me. Didn't like the writing style, did not like any of the characters, and I was kind of disappointed while I was reading this, and I got very frustrated and kind of mad because I was like, this asshole is bullying her. So that one might be on me because the title is literally Bully, and I could have known that going into it, so I really hated this one. I think I skimmed the second half of the book because I was just absolutely done with it, and I gave this 1.5 or like 1 star. Then I picked up a book series that got me right back out of my reading slump. This series, together with 2 other series, is like the best thing that has ever happened to me, and it's the Magnolia Park series. Again, also talked about this one in my favourites video. You have Magnolia Parks, Daisy Hates, Magnolia Parks, The Long Way Home, and then Daisy Hates the Great Undoing. It was 5 stars, 4 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars to me. I adored this series with my entire heart, and I think about these characters every single day. Next, I read The Infinity Between Us by N.S. Perkins. This was disappointing to me because I thought it was going to be something like Love and Other Words and Every Summer After, and it was storyline-wise, but this was just not as good. And I went into this kind of with high hopes because I was still in kind of a book hangover from the Magnolia Park series. So maybe it was just also not the right time. However, this book did not work for me. I thought it was a bit corny and cringy at times, so I gave this one 2.75 stars. It wasn't bad, but it also wasn't good. Next is The Long Way Down by Krista Mekarichi, which is the 2nd book in Reich and Daisy's story. I love Reich and Daisy. However, for some reason, I love them more from like other people's point of view, so I don't love their books as much, even though I do really love them as characters. So I give this one 3.75 stars, I think. I still enjoyed it. I still enjoy all of the books in that series, but it wasn't my favourite. Next I read It Was the Night Shift Before Christmas by Adam Kay. This is kind of like a medical journal that he kept with all of his funny stories from his time as a doctor. It was funny. I liked his other book, This Is Going to Hurt, a lot more. This was just really quick, short. It was an in-between book. I think I gave this 3 stars as well. Then I read 7 Sleepless Nights by Chloe Walsh, which is kind of a compilation of sort of like bonus chapters from the characters in all her series. And I had only read the Boys of Torment series, so I got crumbs. I think I read like 10 chapters or something, 8 maybe. So we got 1 from Joey and Ify, or like 2, and then 2 from Johnny and Shannon, and then 1 from Gibbsy and Claire, and then a few, I think he got like 4 or something from Lizzie and Huey, which made me really excited for their story. This book, however, I think I gave it 3.5 stars or something because the chapters were really enjoyable and I love all of the characters. But I expected a little bit more since I bought the entire book and then we only got like 10 chapters. Which was a bummer. So when I tell you we got crumbs, but I still really enjoyed it. Next I read a book which is really unknown. It's called Unexpected by E.J. Blaze. I love the cover and I can't wait to read the 2nd and 3rd book in this series because those are about characters that got introduced in this book as well. This is a college romance. I think it's boxing. Yeah, boxing, college, friends to lovers. I really enjoyed it. I can't wait to read the rest. I think I gave it 3.8 stars, but like a high 3.8 stars, so like almost 4 stars. I was debating between 4 stars and 3.8. I think it was her first book, and I think it was a really good first book. Again, this is a series, I think, the Sun Valley series, and to be honest, it kind of surprises me that it's not more popular because I, again, really liked it. Then I read Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez, and I remember really enjoying this book. I think, in my opinion, this is a rom-com done right. I was at a festival when I read this book, and I remember waking up a little bit earlier than all of my friends so I could read Yours Truly. The guy in this book had really bad social anxiety, and for some reason that was just really refreshing, because usually it's the girl who's like shy and has anxiety and the guy is like all cocky and popular, and I really enjoyed this switch up. I think I give this 4 stars because it was a bit cheesy at times, but I really loved it. The next book is What Happens After Midnight by K.L. Walther. She is the same author as The Summer of Broken Rules. I did like that one better than this one, but it was still really fun. It was YA, really quick. It was full of Taylor Swift references, and I had so much fun underlining them all. I think I gave this 3.5 stars. It's YA second chance romance. It was enjoyable. It was really fun. Then I read Break My Fall by Chloe Walsh, and I hated this book. I think I DNF'd this at like 70% or something. When I get over halfway into a book, I do rate it, and I also count it as a book read, especially if it's like a really long book. So I rated this one, I think, like 1 star because I really disliked it. It was just not for me. I do understand if people like this series and like this book. It just did not click for me. I thought it was so superficial, there was no depth to the characters, and which surprised me so much because Boys of Torment series, like I said, is one of my favourite series on the planet, and she did release that series after she published this one, so that does show how much she's like grown as an author. But this series did not work for me, so I will not be continuing it. I DNF'd it, and I was so surprised because I was so happy and so excited to find a new author, which like I really connected with her writing style. And then this one just didn't work, so 1 stars really didn't do it for me. The next one is Alone With You in the Ether by Olivia Blake. I really enjoyed this book. I read this one on holiday. I underlined so many things, and I also talked about this one in my favorites video, so I will not be going into any depth. However, I really enjoyed this one. It was unlike anything I had ever read, and I underlined so many things, like I said. Next is You Deserve Each Other by Sarah Hogle. This was, again, a rom-com done right. I laughed out loud. I remember reading this on the beach, and I was so happy because this was the perfect, easy, quick, fun summer read, and I really enjoyed this one. Like I said, it was really funny, and to be very honest, I didn't really expect much going into this book because it was like a true rom-com, and that's not always my favorite. However, this one took me by surprise, and I really enjoyed it. I was contemplating between 4 stars and 4.5 stars, but I gave it 4 stars in the end. I loved this one. Then we have 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. I adore this cover. This is a beautiful cover. I think other romance books could really learn something from this cover. I really enjoyed this one. It wasn't my favorite because I thought it was going to be more of a literary fiction love story, so that's kind of what I wanted at the time. And then it turned out to be a little more romance than I thought, which I love romance, obviously. So that wasn't really a problem, but it was just different than what I expected it to be. It's dual timeline, it's second chance romance, single mum, both 2 writers in New York, I believe. Again, really enjoyed it. 3.8 stars. I underlined a few things as well, and just a solid book. Then I have another book which was an absolute 100 out of 10 for me. I talk about this one in my favorites video as well, so if you have seen that video, you know how much I love this book. I cried at the end. I loved everything about this book. This is a literary fiction love story, and it's also really short. It's like 140 pages. So if you want a literary fiction, beautifully written love story, tragic love story, please read this one. It's beautiful. Then I read Verity by Colleen Hoover. I did read this book in one sitting because I was on a bus home from Spain, and I did think that this was crazy, and I do like really respect her for going out of her like comfort zone. However, I'm not the biggest fan of Colleen Hoover anymore. She was more like at the beginning of my reading journey, so it wasn't my favorite. I think I gave it 3.25 or 3.5 stars maybe, and my thoughts at the end were like, excuse me, pardon me, what? So it did do what it needed to do. It just wasn't my favorite book. Then I read Fault Tilled by Emma Scott. This was also different than what I expected it to be. The writing style ended up not being my favorite. However, I did cry at the end of the book because it's just a really sad story. I do own the second one as well. I just don't know when I'm going to get to that or if I'm even going to read it. It was 3.5 stars because it did make me cry, so it did like evoke emotions in me. However, it wasn't my favorite because my expectations were also pretty high going into it, because I had heard from so many people that it was 5 stars and that it made them bawl their eyes out. And I do agree that it was a sad book and it did make me cry a little. However, the writing style just wasn't for me, which was a bummer because I did really like the characters as well. Then I unfortunately read 2 flops back to back, and the first one was The Happy Ever After playlist by Abby Jimenez, which came as a surprise to me because obviously, like I said, I really enjoyed Yours Truly. And I really enjoyed like the first half of this book. I think it was 4 stars at that time. And then the second half, I absolutely hated. It suddenly changed completely, and I think I heard someone else say that as well, that they felt the same way. So the second half would have been like 1 or 2 stars, so I don't think I rated that one. If I was going to rate it, I would have given it 2.5 stars, but since I didn't finish it, I think I stopped at like 60%. I don't think I rated it on Goodreads. Then I'm going to be really negative for a second. So sorry, because then I read Things We Don't Talk About by Pandora Owl. This was a poetry book. I got this secondhand, so I'm really happy that I did not pay full price for this one, because this was absolutely horrible, like absolutely horrible. The fact that this got published makes me think that I should just, I don't know, dig up my journal from when I was 14 or something and try to publish that, because what the fuck was this? So I gave that one 1 stars, and I'm really glad that this was so short, because otherwise I would have been so incredibly angry because it would have been such a waste of my time. But I hated it and I unhauled it already, so I don't have the physical copy anymore. And luckily I read a 5-star book next, because otherwise I would have been in a reading slump. So the book that saved me was Talking at Night by Claire Daverley. This is, and I also said this in my other video, the longer version of Normal People. It was a similar writing style, similar storyline, but like also different. I loved it, really connected to the characters. I thought this was going to be something completely different than what it ended up being, but it was so beautiful. I underlined so many things, and this one really stuck with me, so 5 stars. I'm going to start to pile through these a bit faster because I'm taking way too much time. Then I read The Bodyguard by Catherine Center. Don't have the physical copy. I think I gave this 3 stars or 3.5 stars. It was fun, cute, sweet, romance, very quick. What I really liked about this book is the fact that he was an actor, and the girl who looked like she was a primary school teacher was actually the bodyguard that could have you on your back in like 2 seconds flat. So that was really cool, enjoyed it, 3.5 stars. Next I read Say You Swear, which was every single cliche that you could possibly think of put into one and published in the form of this book, but I ate it up anyway. And I really enjoyed this book, mostly because the boy, the main male character, was such a sweetheart. Like, the sentence, "In a world of boys, he's a gentleman," was made for the boy in this book. I loved their relationship. I really enjoyed it. There were a few things about this book that I really did not like, but I really enjoyed it nonetheless. So I think I give this 4 stars or something. Really enjoyed it for what it was. It's not literature, but it was fun. Then I read the first 2 books in the Naturals series, The Naturals and Killer Instincts, but a friend of mine has that one. I loved these books. I talked about them in my other video as well. They were fast-paced, entertaining, kind of Criminal Minds, but like for a young adult. I really loved both of them. I think I gave both of them like 4.5 stars or something. Really fun. Really good to get you out of a reading slump. Then I read the first 2 books in the Heartstopper series. I adore the TV show. It's one of my most rewatched shows. It feels like a warm hug. It's just pure happiness. So I have it on in the background, like on a loop. So I love the TV show. These books, it's graphic novel, so it's like pictures and text. They follow the show perfectly. So I stopped reading after the second one because I don't want to know what happens in season 3. So I didn't rate these books. I think they would be like 4 stars. Next I read I Want to Die But I Want to Eat Tteokbokki. This was interesting. The beginning was very promising and I really liked it. However, the conversations that she has with her psychiatrist, that's basically the entirety of this book, some of the things that she was talking about did not sit right with me, which I don't think you're supposed to like the main girl in this book, because obviously you read like her deepest, darkest thoughts and why she goes to therapy. So I don't think she's supposed to be like a likable main character, but just some of the things that she said really did not sit right with me. However, in the beginning, they touched on something that was called, I don't remember what it was called, but it was kind of the explanation of the state between near happiness and near depression, or like constant depression and near happiness, and that was really interesting to read about. But then afterwards it just kind of started going downhill, so I think I gave this 3 stars or something. Next I read When in Rome, which was sweet, fun, cute. I gave it 3.5 stars. It was by Sarah Adams. What helped me enjoy this book so much is the fact that the characters, Noah and Amelia is like a very famous pop star, and Noah is like this small town pie shop owner. I pictured Brooke from One Tree Hill and Lucas from One Tree Hill as the main characters, and then the girl is like kind of Taylor Swift level famous. It was just really fun and entertaining, and I do think that because I pictured like 2 actors basically as the male and female love interest, that did result in having like very vivid pictures of the characters, so that was really, really fun. Then I read Already Falling by Angelica Rose. I did not like this book. I gave it 2.5 stars. It was really cringy and corny and just not well written at all. But in the words of the great Taylor Swift, something kept me holding on to nothing, because I did finish this book. However, it was just a really big disappointment because it was childhood best friends to lovers, college romance. It just had so many aspects to the story that made me think I would enjoy it. However, really disappointing. I paid way too much. I went out of my way to buy this book, and then when it got delivered, I stopped the book I was in the middle of and just started reading this one, and then I hated it. Then I read Wildfire, which I also did not like. I think I gave this one 2 stars as well. I also don't think I finished this one. I think I got like to 70%. It was just a bit disappointing to me, and I loved Icebreaker, and I loved the scene and the friendship group in Icebreaker, and then suddenly we were just in a completely different setting with a completely different friend group. And I just didn't really connect to the characters. I thought the guy was really sweet. However, it felt really, really different than the first book in the series, and that was just kind of a bummer to me because I was kind of hoping for something similar, and also the fact that he played hockey and it was supposed to be, I thought it was going to be a hockey romance series, and then this had absolutely nothing to do with hockey, so this was just a bit disappointing to me. However, I do understand why other people like this book. It was just a bit boring in my opinion, but if this book worked for you, like, kudos. I wish it worked for me. So this was, no judgment at all, I just wasn't for me. Then I got the book See You on Venus by Victoria Vinuesa from my friend for my birthday, and so I read it. I gave it 3 stars. I think it was really YA, so I didn't really connect with the characters. However, I do think if The Fault in Our Stars and All the Right Places had a baby, it would be this book. I did really like it. I liked both of the characters. I just couldn't connect with it, so I gave it 3 stars. It was sweet though. Shit. I have to leave. We will continue when I get back. Okay, I'm back. If the lighting's a wee bit different, I'm so sorry. It's been like over an hour and a half since the last clip because I went to the doctor's. I was perfectly on time, and then I had to sit there and wait for 40 minutes because they were running behind schedule, which means that I could have easily finished filming this video, but it's okay. We'll finish now. The next book I read is If Cats Disappeared from the World by Genki Kawamura. A friend of mine recommended this to me, so I read it. I personally thought that it was a very cool concept, but it was just a bit poorly executed. In my opinion, nothing really happened. It was kind of, I was constantly waiting, like, okay, when is like the big thing going to happen? There was no big thing. So maybe this just went right over my head, and I do understand if some people found this really, really beautiful. It just really didn't work for me, and I was kind of really bored all throughout this book. Even though it's like really short, it took me a long time to finish it. So I gave this 3 stars, but it's 3 small stars, if that makes any sense. Okay, then I read another book on my Kindle, and this book, I started this because I was in the mood for a hockey romance, and all of the things that this book claimed to be were things that I usually really enjoy. It was a hockey romance, it was reformed playboy, which I usually love that trope, and I also think it was supposed to be kind of like a golden retriever black cat thing. However, it was about 500 pages, and they got together at like the 20% mark, and then the rest of the book was just fluff and blah, and I DNF'd it at like 75% because at that point they had been together. I kind of realized where the story was going, what the third act breakup was going to be, and just it was really predictable, and some of the things that the character said really, really cringed me out. At like 75% I just could not do it anymore, and also because like I think 80% of what I was reading at that point was smut, and I just really didn't care for it, and at first I was determined to finish the book. However, at one point I realized it has taken me almost 2 months to get to the 70% mark, and also I had read about 8 books in between. So then I was like, well, you obviously could not care less about the story, the characters, what happens in this book. And then I was like, okay, I'm putting it down. I do not care. It just really did not live up to my expectations, and I think I gave it 2 stars. The next book I read is called Unsteady by Peyton Corinne. This was a hooky romance. It was Golden Retriever Black Cat, and it was really, really sweet. I really enjoyed this book. It reminded me a lot of Icebreaker combined with Off Campus, combined with Boys of Tommen, storyline-wise and character-wise sometimes. And I do think if I had not read all of those other books before I'd read this one, I would have liked this a lot more, because then it would have been way more refreshing and new. But I still really enjoyed this one nonetheless, and I absolutely loved the fact that there was no 3rd act breakup in this book, because the guy simply just would not have it, and that was really hot. And also, this is the first book in a series, so I am really excited to read the rest of them, because the couple that was hinted at in this book, I am really interested in their story, so I really enjoyed this one. It also has a very elaborate playlist in the front, because the girl really likes music and she uses it to kind of help her with her own anxiety, and then she finds out that the guy in the book is having anxiety, and then she makes a playlist for him to help him, and it was just really sweet. So I gave this one 3.8 stars, I believe. I really enjoyed it. Okay, then I started having FOMO because the rest of the world was on the Fourth Wing train, and so I felt left out and wanted to see what all the fuss was about. It did not disappoint. I gave this one 5 stars. It would be a 6-star book. I was so completely immersed in this world and this storyline. I loved the characters. I loved the battles, the dragons, the war college setting, just all of it. It was fantastic, and it made me only want to read romantasy from now on, because I was like, well, if there's no dragons and shadowmen involved, then I'm not interested. But when I was reading this, Iron Flame came out, so then I read that one, but a friend of mine has it at the moment, so I don't have the physical copy. Also loved that one, not as much as the first one. I think if I would say that the first one was 6 stars, then this would be 5 stars, but there were some things that annoyed me about Iron Flame, so it wasn't as perfect to me as the first one. But I just loved being in this world with these characters, and the storyline was so just fun to go along with, and I was completely detached from the normal world for like a week. So I gave both of them 5 stars. Okay, it's really starting to get darker, but this is the last series, so these are the last couple of books. After I finished Fourth Wing, I didn't want to go back into like normal world regular books, so I started the Shatter Me series. So first I read Shatter Me. I think I read this in a day and I gave it 3.5 stars. Then I read Destroy Me, which was in Erin's point of view. I also gave this 3.5 stars, I think. Then I read Unravel Me, which I also really enjoyed. The parts where Juliet and Erin really interacted were 4 stars to me, but we didn't get that many of them, so this was also 3.5 or 3 stars. Then I read Fracture Me, which was in Adam's point of view. I did not love that one as much, but it was also 70 pages or something, so I think I gave that one 2.5, 2.75 or 3 stars. Then I got to my favourite book of the series, which is everyone's favourite book in the series, Ignite Me. It's the 4th book? The 3rd book. It's the 3rd book if you don't count the novellas. This was where the romance between Warner and Juliet really developed, and kind of, like, this was the romantic book in the series. I really enjoyed this one. I gave this one 4 stars. Loved them together. Warner's a sweetheart. I thought he was a true psychopath in the first one, but I came around to him. And then the last book I read in 2023 was Restore Me, also by Tahiri Malfi. This book kind of put me in a bit of a reading slump, because in my opinion, the first 70% of this book was really slow and not much was happening, and I wasn't really enjoying myself, which was a bummer because obviously I loved Ignite Me. And then suddenly the last part of the book was so fast-paced, so entertaining, so much was happening, and I kind of felt disappointed that all of that was saved for the last 30%, because I was like, well, you made me sit through 70% of boringness. So this one's also 3.5 stars, because the last part was fantastic and the first part was like 3 small stars. So that was that one. And that was also the last book. I will put on the screen how many books that was, because I did reread a few books. I think I reread Binding 13, Keeping 13, Redeeming 6, One True Loves, Lie With Me. So I read a few more books than I showed you, but they were rereads, so I wasn't going to talk about them twice. Anyway, thank you for watching today's video. If you watched all the way to this point, please comment your favorite book of 2023 so I can add that one to my TBR. And I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will hopefully see you in my next one very soon. And I now have to put away all of these books. Bye!